Hey everyone, and welcome to Business Boutique. I'm Christy Wright, and today we are continuing our conversation on branding. But today, we're going to get tactical. In fact, I'm going to share with you an exclusive interview again from our Business Boutique Academy, where I had the opportunity to sit down with Tim Newton. Tim is the Senior Creative Officer here at Ramsey Solutions, and he was pivotal in building the Business Boutique brand. He's even going to walk us through really tactical steps we can take to build a brand, including creating something called a style guide. I think this is going to help you even further in building your own brand for your business. Check this out. Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm so excited because we are continuing the conversation on branding. And as you can tell, I have a good friend here. Tim, welcome back.
Hey, thank you.
Now, this is your third Academy lesson, and you are a Business Boutique favorite. You have spoken at our events many times doing breakouts. And your last two lessons, if you guys have not checked them out, how to create a mood board and how to create a great website, were just a huge hit because this is a pain point for people.
Yeah,
it's overwhelming.
I get it.
They're like, where do I start? What do I do? And I know you have not only a lot of experience in this area, but it's a passion of yours. So tell our members again your role on the team and a little bit of your background and why you love this so much.
Yeah. Well, my role here is I'm Executive Creative Director over our money products, financial piece, stuff like that. But before that, I was Creative Director over personalities.
Yes.
And so like over Business Boutique Rachel, Christy, Hogan. And that's really where my love for branding began because years and years ago, there wasn't an identified brand for personalities. We said, we gotta create something. You know? We were just making things, but we needed some structure to it, So that's really where my love of branding really started going, is the personalities, because, I love this stuff.
Now, how long have you worked for Ramsey Solutions?
I've been here just got 10 years.
10 years, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So speaking of brands, over a decade, you've seen this brand evolve so much, and you've had your fingerprint on it. And as we've gotten bigger and bigger, we're 800 team members now in the whole company. It's gotten more sophisticated, but it's that much more important we are consistent as we've grown. Because I would imagine, especially in those early days, like you said, when people weren't thinking about this, it was just kind of throw stuff against the wall. Someone's creating a PDF over here, a Word document over here, and it was probably pretty inconsistent. So talk to me a little bit about your experience of pulling those things together to make it consistent kind of back in the day.
Yeah, well, we needed to come up with something because I was noticing we were making a lot of stuff and that's just what it felt like, was a lot of stuff.
Right.
And there was nothing bringing this stuff together. Right. And it started to hit me that the more we continue down this route, the more we're not going to build trust with the audience. Yeah. And so that's why creating a style guide was so important, and creating what the brand is going to be was so important, so we can build that trust. But it was starting to get painful, seeing the stuff that was coming out and seeing that thing is not connected to that thing.
These don't match.
Nothing. And so I saw that when the audience saw bits and pieces of Business Boutique and it didn't feel like something else before, we were just going to lose them along the way. We weren't building any kind of loyalty. We were just throwing stuff out there, Yeah. And so it became really important. And I remember talking to some of the leaders saying, we've got to build a style guide for what Business Boutique is going to be. And I remember some people saying, why do we need that? And then I made the style guide and they said, oh my gosh, we got to do this for everything. And I'm like, I know.
Yes. Yeah. And
so,
it's just amazing how much thought went into it. And it's not difficult to do, but it takes time. It takes intentionality.
It does.
Now let's talk about great brands. Like, what makes a great brand? And then what can these business leaders do to become one? So what are some of the cornerstone principles or attributes or qualities that you're like, man, that's a great brand?
Yeah. The biggest one, I would say, there's two, but the biggest is it has to feel human.
Okay.
It has to feel human. That is so key. And it's because we don't really connect so much with a product or service. Like, we kind of connect to it, but we connect with humans on a deep level. And so a brand needs to feel human. And so it needs to have character, it needs to have personality, it needs to have all these attributes to it that we think of with people. Because if it does that, then the audience will connect on a much deeper level. And so that has to be there. And you even touched on it, consistency. Yeah. That is so key. Consistency either builds trust or it breaks trust. And so if you're not consistent, then you're going to start losing trust with the audience. But the more consistent you are, you build that trust. And so if you put those two things together, feels like a human, being consistent, think about this. When it comes to people, say you have a friend who you've known them for years, they talk a certain way, they act a certain way, dress a certain way, all this stuff. If one day they came up, acted different, and dressed different, and talked different, how long would you continue to trust that person? like you wouldn't. Slowly, you'd start losing that trust. So even the consistency with the person is so important, but that person has a personality and they have character. Your brand needs to be exactly the same way.
Yeah.
And those two things, feeling human and being consistent, are so key. If you get those things down, it's going to take your business so far.
I love that. And it's so true because I think we miss the humanity of a brand. When most people think of a brand, they think of a logo.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's that
exactly.
simple, that's the logo.
Yes.
And it's actually not. It encompasses so much more than that. You and I have talked about this before, but I love how you're touching on the humanity of it. Because people do connect with human beings, and they not brands or logos even necessarily. And so that loyalty is built in the personal touch of it. And nothing will break trust like being Dr. Jekyll one day and Mr. Hyde.
Exactly.
So because you don't know who you're going to get.
Yeah.
But when you are consistent, people feel like, regardless of how big your brand is, people feel like, oh, you're their best friend.
Yeah.
Or, oh, we feel so connected. So if I say something, it almost becomes like inside jokes, like, oh, that's Christy's referring to that story from 2 years ago or whatever. And so it's just—
they feel connected.
That's right. And it's a different level of relationship with your customers, which I think is so important. Now, these ladies' challenge this month is to fill out their adjectives list.
Yeah.
So we've talked about this before. What do you want your brand to represent? I kind of used the example last week of your brand is like your reputation for your business.
Yeah.
You think of a person, it's their reputation.
It is.
They walk, how they talk, what you know about them, what they're known for. And so what are these adjectives you want to be the reputation for your business? And so their challenge was to fill that out.
Yeah.
And then next week, they're actually filling out a style guide. So they're going to do this. They're going to actually walk through this. Now, one of the things that you and I were just talking about even before we went live is we did this for me years ago. And I remember loving this activity. I don't know if you remember this, but I was like, this is so fun. Like it was like, if you were a car, what car would you be? You know, and I was like, oh, a Jeep, like practical, but still really fun.
Yeah.
And then it was something like, are you luxury or necessity? And I was like, right in the middle. It's kind of like a manicure. Like it's a luxury, but it's $12. So like, seriously, what's the big deal?
Yeah,
I remember Chris Hogan hated this activity. He was like, car, what are you talking about? So it's just funny to think back and think how we made decisions years ago that still are informing the Business Boutique brand today. Now, one of the questions that I don't think I've asked you, and I think it's top of mind for me because we're living it out in real time. What does it look like when a brand evolves? So let's say we've got some business leaders watching right now, and they've been in business 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, and they feel like their business is in a different place. It maybe represents something, maybe their market has shifted a little bit. And just as they've kind of grown up and matured, they feel like their brand is evolving. I'll give you a practical example of Business Boutique. One of the things that I've noticed about branding is that the market informs your brand as much as you do. So I will do things that I don't think are a big deal, but the market's like, oh my gosh, they really connect with that. And then I emphasize that more. Hey, y'all. I just say that because I'm country, but it's become a thing. So now I do it more. Fun earrings, okay? That's become a thing. It's like a brand thing. So now it's all like, what fun earrings is she going to wear?
Yeah.
So as you start to learn more about the brand and it kind of either expands or adapts, how do you kind of keep up with that and stay intentional versus just throwing all the new things in the mix that seem like a good idea that particular day? How do you stay true to it, but let it grow? Yeah,
there's a couple of things. Like when you're thinking of your adjective lists, like you really need to understand who you are at your core. And that stuff never changes, like who you are at your core. When I taught at Business Boutique at the last event, I made up a fake business. And I said, this is what my business is going to be. Right. And I said, I have 3 things at my core that I'm about. I'm about family, I'm optimistic, and I'm a servant mentality. Yeah. Like that's who I am. So I said, okay, well, if these are 3 things about me, how do I communicate that in a way, right? So I said, well, if I'm about family, then everything that I put out in the world probably needs to feel inviting. Yeah. And if I'm optimistic, everything out in the world probably needs to feel bright and cheery and stuff like that, right? And if I'm a servant mentality, everything probably needs to feel warm. Yeah. And so I said, all right, well, everything's going to be bright, inviting, and warm, and everything I do is going to put out like that, right? And so after I put those together, I started getting all the imagery and everything to say inviting, bright, and warm. And I started putting it out in the world, right? Like that's what you do. And like you're talking about, it evolves. And that's what's fun about a brand is once you start putting stuff out, you see what connects with people and what doesn't. Right. And as you're doing that, you can start building on it. And so as the years go on, it's important that like every month or so, you take inventory of everything that you put out in the world, print it all out, put it on the wall, and just start putting X's next to things that don't feel inviting, bright, and warm. Right. And put checks next to things that do and say why. Like take inventory all the time of what works and what doesn't work. You do this naturally. Like when you're saying, I say y'all, like you're on stage and you can see people respond. Right. And I think you make a mental check mark and say, that connects.
That's
okay,
right.
I'm going to use that more.
That's a thing.
And as the years go on, you start understanding this is what the brand is.
Yeah.
When you're at the beginning, you're saying, I think this is what the brand is.
Right.
But at least you're doing it with intention.
Yeah.
But as you start testing that out in the marketplace, you really see what connects on that deep level. And you say, all right, that works, that doesn't work, that works, that doesn't work. Get rid of those things that don't work.
That's right.
Keep the things that do work and just make those better. And that's basically what you're doing. You just kind of do it subconsciously.
I love this. And I love the idea of the adjective list and the taking the next step of the style guide. Because the style guide is where you are putting guardrails on paper and saying, this is who we are. And anything outside of this is not who we are. And anything inside of this is on brand and is who we are. And I think that's so important, especially as your team grows. And this is something that we've even experienced, Tim, and I know you haven't been as hands-on with Business Boutique, day to day recently, but one of the things we've experienced is as we've had different designers working on our work. Yeah. So you have different people pitch in and that type of thing, from website to event ads or whatever. Every designer will have a slightly different take on what those adjectives mean, or a slightly different take on what the style guide means, right? Yeah. And so what we've noticed, and we're kind of, they'll see this even more rolling out in the coming months, but we're going through a website redesign because what we're finding is through incremental changes, through incremental adjustments to the design, we've gotten a little bit away from the number one thing that makes me me. And the number one thing and the audience told us this, the number one thing that the audience told us in our recent survey that thousands of people took was that I'm energetic. Yeah. It's the number one thing. Yeah. So when you go to businessboutique.com, it needs to feel energetic.
It's an extension of you.
That's right. Yeah. And so through incremental changes over the last few years, we've stayed true to the colors, but then it's coffee mugs and it's kind of pastels and it's soft. When you go to the website, you feel very relaxed. It's beautiful, but you feel relaxed, not energetic. Yeah. And so we did a big academy launch, last fall, and we just messed around and we did some bright colors and fun earrings, and it felt so like, oh wow, that feels energetic. So you're always using the style guide as a guide, but making sure that through people's new ideas or new projects and initiatives, how can you, stay true to your core of who you are, but there can be different ways to represent that and test and play with stuff as the market informs it.
And just like a person, we grow and mature. Right. Like we change over time, but we stay true to our core the whole time. But we do grow and we do mature. And that's basically what we're doing. As we're learning more and more, we're maturing and we're defining that even more. It's just like people. Yep. I mean, it's just like people. That's why I always want to press that point that a brand has to feel like a human.
Yeah.
It does,
I love that.
Yeah, so just like people.
One of the things that you said that I think is a really good point is that some of these things that I'm making note of are intuitive for me. And I think it is for you as well. I'm on stage, I tell a joke, no one laughs. Yeah. I make a mental note. Don't tell that joke again, right? Yeah. Like that didn't work. Or something on social media blows up. I'm like, wow, that really connected. Let's do more of what worked about that that we should do more of. What didn't work about that? Let's not do that again. For ladies that might not be marketing minded, have a creative, strength in their wheelhouse, how do they make decisions that are on brand when maybe they can't just look at two things and go, oh, that's on brand, that's off brand? How would you walk them through making these decisions? How would you walk them through maybe a formula or a process, or how to use the style guide to say, yes, that's true to brand, or no, that feels off? And even if they can't articulate why, maybe someone that for them it's not intuitive. How do they do that?
Yeah, honestly, I would surround myself with people I trust to help me see it. If I don't have that mindset, because I understand that you even talked about Hogan. He doesn't like that exercise of saying this and this. Like he probably just doesn't really feel it the way that you feel it. And he has a strong brand. Like I think he gets it, but he just feels it a different way. I would surround myself with people that I trust to tell me. And I would go around and say, look, this is what I'm trying to be. Does this stuff feel like that? Like, and you even kind of did that. You said you surveyed 1,000 people. Like you went out and said, does this feel right? I would do that. And just put that stuff out there and say, does this connect on the way that it needs to connect? Yeah. It's really the best way to do it. Like when we're putting products out in the world, the first thing we do is get in front of people and watch how they use it, watch how they respond to it, and then we make adjustments based on that. Like we always need to be doing that. And so I would do that same thing, just surround myself with people I trust that'll tell me the truth, that this doesn't feel like you, or this does feel like you. But give them those words, say, this is who I am at my core. Does this stuff communicate that? Yeah. And let them tell you no, and take that feedback and change from there. That's totally what I would do.
All right, let's talk about the style guide and the connection between the adjective list and the style guide, because I have a marketing background. So if you say, Christy, I want you to show, give me some examples of fonts you like that are feminine but assertive, but whatever.
Yeah.
I could do that. I see the connection between adjectives and fonts or colors or imagery. For people that don't, for people that they go, okay, I've got this adjective list, and you're telling me to fill out a style guide. I don't know how to connect these dots. Like, how do these adjectives inform the style guide? We tell them to do that, but I don't think we've broken down how to do that. How would you guide us in saying, these are the types of things that represent that adjective list? What are we looking for?
You're looking for, you want to define for yourself how to communicate that. And it could be wrong. That's totally fine. But once you test it out, you'll see. But I'll give you an example for Financial Peace University and for Ramsey as a whole. We said, who are we at our core? We needed to understand this. And so we said, well, we are godly. Like everything we teach is biblical foundation. We are passionate. Like Dave founded this whole thing based on passion and everything, right? And we care about the people. Like the people that we're trying to help, that is who we're serving. So godly, passionate, and people. And so what I found is a lot of times everybody's like, okay, but what does that mean really? And so I said, okay, well, how do we communicate that? God, let's make things feel warm. And when it comes to people, let's make things feel real. That's how we'll communicate that. And when it comes to passion, that needs to be communicated boldly. And so then I noticed that everybody was like, okay, great. Now, what does that mean?
Right, exactly.
And you go there again. And so you're like, okay, you really have to dig in deep and say, okay, what does warmth really mean? When I think of warmth, what do I associate with that? And write that stuff down. Well, I think of bright sunlight. I think of smiles, people smiling. I think of being inviting. That's what warmth feels like to me. When I think of real people, what do I associate that with? I associate that with real photography, not stock photography. Right. I associate that with real conversation and real language, and even messing up on how I talk, like flaws. That's people. So I will intentionally have some flaws in my brand. And bold, what does that look like? Well, if I associate boldness with bright colors, I associate it with slanted lines moving forward. Like you really got to dig in deep and think, what do I associate with these words? And just write that stuff down, a big word bank of what that stuff is. Yeah. And once you take that word bank, say, this is what warm, real, and bold feels like to me. This is what it feels like. And then you go find images that represent those things. Yeah. But does that make sense? They're all associated with something. Totally. You need to understand those associations and then bring that to light.
I think the associations is really key. And once you start to test and mess with it, you'll start to see more of it. It becomes like you're strengthening that muscle. One of the things that's interesting that I think you hit on that I'm just thinking of on the spot here is that a lot of times we can take a word, like let's say we have an adjective list and there's one word and we take that word and go find a bunch of pictures that represent that thing. However, if you only take one word, there are 50 different ways to evidence that word. So let's use the word energetic. Everyone said that's the number one thing they say about me. She's so energetic. She's got so much energy, which I love. I'm like, that's great. I love that that's what they think of me. Well, you could have energetic and crazy, energetic and annoying, energetic and clutter.
And it means
energetic
something different to everybody.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so I think if you, let's say, for example, you were going to take energetic and go find a bunch of energy images that represent energetic.
Yeah.
What other words would you use to describe those images? And do those words line up with you? And if so, then that's probably a good one to put on your Pinterest board or your style guide type of thing, mood board like we talked about. But if it's not, if it's like energetic and loud, annoying, crazy, I'm like, I don't want to be loud, annoying, crazy. Yeah. Some people may think I am, but that's not what I'm going for. Yeah. So then you're finding those as like energetic, optimistic, energetic, excited, energetic, hopeful, confident. That I'm like, yes. So let's put that image on there. So I think that's really good to say, how can you use each of these words as a test to find images that represent those, not just one word, and you go to all the images for that one word.
Yeah, well, and you hit on something else. It's just as important to define what it is not.
Yes,
like that is just as important. Like when I'm talking to my team, I say, okay, this is who we are as a brand. What we're not is this. Like I'll give you an example. We said in our photography, we need to stop showing people sad and upset. Like we need to stop showing that because we don't want to show people a reflection of where they are right now. We want to show people what hope looks like for them.
Hopeful.
We want to give them a vision of what success looks like for them. So we said we're not going to do any photos of people going,
Yeah,
we specifically said that is not what we're going to do.
Good.
And so it's even important to write that stuff down and be as specific as possible. I remember one of the things we said about Business Boutique is we said everything that we make needs to feel like a clean house.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in our minds, we all have an idea of what a clean house looks like. We all have a friend that says, man, that's a clean house.
Right.
And so we said, it's going to feel like a clean house. And so when we started looking up imagery, we found images that just had, bright white cabinets, all this kind of stuff. And I remember finding pillows that had the teal color back there, that kind of stuff. But we were super specific and said, it's going to feel like a clean house. And so I would take these associations and try to be as specific as possible. Like where would this brand hang out?
Yeah.
What kind of products would this brand buy?
Right.
And be super specific about it, because that can start to give people a very clear definition of what you're going for.
I think that's good because I'm just as passionate about the things that I'm about as I am passionate about the things that I'm not about.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm passionately not about these things. So like if someone shows me marketing copy that sounds a certain way or shows me an ad that looks super sophisticated, super intimidating, I'm so passionately not intimidating that I will fight to be approachable.
Yeah.
And so if you see something that this is what we're not, it really helps you also make decisions that you're not that.
And write it down and put it in the style guide.
Right.
We are not this. We are not this. Yeah.
I remember, this is a silly example, Tim, but way back in the day when I was first transitioning into a role as the full-time Ramsey personality, they had me meet with a style consultant, like, I don't know, try to clean us up, I guess, like, make sure we know how to look good on camera and stuff. Yeah. And I sat down with her and she was showing me all these images that she had pulled of what my hair should look like. And it was a very stiff bob, a very straight news anchor, lawyer bob. I don't hate bobs. Some of you have bobs. I think it's great. It's just not me. I'm like wild, crazy, long hair, fun, whatever. And she just was showing, she's like, this is so you. And I was like, you are so wrong. I just remember thinking, because I know myself and I'm not that. Like I'm not a news anchor. I'm not an attorney. I am your best friend that also knows business. And it's like making sure that even the people you're working with, from if you have a style consultant or you have a graphic designer or you have someone doing your marketing and your social media images, making sure you don't have to micromanage that, but oversee that in a way that you're going, hey, that was their interpretation of the style guide or the direction of the brand. And we're 2 degrees off or we're 20 degrees off and here's why, and helping pull them back in line, because to your point, no one knows the brand better than you do. And so you've got to protect the brand for consistency and trust. It's for the end game of trust. You're not being a micromanager. It's for
all
trust.
It's all about trust. I still talk to my team all the time. Like when I see something that doesn't feel right, then I'll say, oh, that doesn't feel right. And a lot of times the team will say, well, why doesn't that feel right? I'm like, well, it doesn't feel right for this reason. And I'm like, oh, and I add that to the style guide. It's always evolving. It's always growing because you just learn more as it goes out. But that still happens where I'm like, well, that doesn't feel right. Well, because that feels like a Smurf, and we're not Smurfs, So let's not do that. And I put it in the style guide.
So many people don't know this. This is just a million years ago, but when we were naming Business Boutique, the very first logo, we came up with like 3 or 4 mock-ups. The creative team did. But the one that like we landed on in front of Dave, and I remember sitting in this, I don't know if you were in that room. It was me and Dave, and maybe it was Luke. And we're sitting there, and it had the same Christy Wright's and business with the font was exactly the font of Guinness, the beer.
Oh, yeah.
And then it had boutique. And so it's like, I loved everything about it except the Guinness type font. And so everyone's like, we love it, love it, love it. Dave, Luke, they're all high five. This is it. This is the logo. Here we go. And I was like, hey, I love it too. However, I was like, I feel like business looks like Guinness. And they are like, does. Like as soon as I said it, they got it, and then they shifted it to what it is today. But it's just funny because you've got to be willing to speak up and say it's not whatever the thing is. If it feels a little bit off. Let's give them some examples, because I love talking about the why and the what, but let's actually like bring this home and give them some specific examples of brands that are exactly what we're talking about. They are consistent. You know what to expect. It looks the same. It feels the same. Everywhere you interact with them, you're like, oh, that's so that brand. Where you don't even have to read words to know it's that brand, because you see the imagery and you're like, oh, like I could see Emily Lay's colors and be like, oh, that's Emily Lay. I don't even have to see Emily Lay anywhere because it's such a consistent brand. So let's give them some examples that we can kind of tie this together.
Well, there's big ones that I always follow, like Nike. I love how Nike does stuff. Because everything they put out there, it does have the same kind of photography, does have the same kind of type. That's all good and everything. But what they're saying through their photography and through their videos is always, we're going to help you feel like an amazing athlete. Like everything they put out, if you think about their commercials and all that, it's always it's always very relational. Like it feels like a world that I understand every time they put that in there. And it's always regular people just sweating and fighting. And they say that we're going to make you feel like an athlete. And I remember reading once Phil Knight, he said that if you have a body, you are an athlete. Because he wanted to make people understand or break this thought that athletes are only famous NBA players. And so he says, no, we're all athletes. If you have a body, you're an athlete.
I love that.
And we are the brand for you. And so whenever I see their stuff, I always think, oh man, that feels like a world I understand. And they even use language of words that I get. Like there was one ad, it said, yesterday you said tomorrow or something like that. Like when it came and the imagery was working out, and it said yesterday you said tomorrow. And it's something like this, or I better get an ab out of this, with someone working out. But it's like regular words that people say. So they're connecting on a relational level. And so I love that about Nike, and they're very true. Like for years, they've always had that same kind of message. Love that about Nike, and they're very, Disney's another one that I really, really like. And what's interesting about Disney and Nike is I can't really think of colors or anything that represent those brands, because it's branding is more than just the colors and all that stuff. It's also how you're communicating. And so with Disney, what I like is that I can watch a preview for a movie and it'll look familiar and I'll think, I think I want to see that. And then once I see it's from Disney, I'm like, yes, I want to see that. And the reason is because I know it's going to be family friendly. I know that the story is going to be number one and it's going to be a great story. Like I know that about Disney. And they've been consistently doing that for years and years and years. And so they know that about themselves and they stay true to that. And for that reason, like for years, all of us, like we'll see Disney and be like, all right, I'll trust that. I'll trust that that's going to be good and I can take my family to it. So those are a couple of businesses. Patagonia also does a great job. I know that their business owner is big on the outdoors. So if you look at their Instagram feed, everything is about being in the outdoors. And they care so much about the quality of the clothing that they even have a department specially designed for you to send your stuff in. If it tears, they'll fix it for free and send it back because they believe in their stuff that much. And so because of that, like that's a very human thing to do, to take care of it and show the outdoors, all that, because the owner, that's what he loves. And so that's represented in all the stuff. And so those are brands that just stay very true to who they are and they're always communicating the exact same way every time. And it's no wonder why those businesses are so successful. Like they're very consistent and they feel very human. They create these worlds that I understand as a regular person. And they put that stuff out there.
I love it too, because it's funny, because I have a background in advertising, it's like you're always looking at advertising. You're always paying attention to what they're doing. As a speaker, I can never just sit back and watch a speaker. Now I'm always like, ooh, I see. Okay, that was good. I'm going to make a mental note of that. But it's funny, you see this even with like television commercials. So for example, a specific brand may not exist for every person, where you're going, okay, this brand is for this market, and I'm going to create an ad that is directed at this person specifically. So you see this when Matt and I, for example, are at home on the couch. There was one commercial that came on and Matt goes, that is so stupid. And I was like, and I wasn't paying attention. I was like, rewind it. What was it? And it was for Peloton. Okay. And it's this woman, and it goes flashes of her having a really hard day at the office and then cranking it out on the bike. And then her baby's crying and then cranking out on the bike. And then fight with her husband and cranking out on the bike. And he's like, that is so stupid. I go, oh, I get it. I need that bike. Right? Because it's like, I just want to crank out all of my frustrations for the day on the bike. I'm like, because that ad was for me. Now, flip the roles. Sonic. He thinks they're hysterical. I'm like, these are the dumbest commercials of these jokers talking about corn dogs in their car. I don't get it. Like, I don't get it at all. And he thinks they're the funniest commercials because those commercials are for a specific person. What a great example of that, of like, I totally connected with the one that was for me and so on. So even just as a real practical example of your brand, doesn't have to exist for everyone. But if you hit to the heart of the person it does exist for, it's a huge success.
It's true. And it's funny you said it. I actually used that Peloton commercial as an example of a business that does such a great job. Because I saw that commercial, and when I saw the couple fighting and all that, and I see her struggling with the kids and then going on the bike, I looked at that and I said, that is what life looks like.
That is it.
That is what life looks like. They got it. Like they really feel it. And like if you can like, they make it feel human. That's exactly what it is. They make it feel human, because I said before, that's a world that I can understand. And so when they have that commercial, oh my gosh, I watch and say, yes, that is life.
Okay, let's take this and camp here for a second, because this is really good. This is not even what I was planning to ask you next, but let's just camp here, because I think let's contrast that. Let's use the Peloton example. Okay, that ad, you've got that ad. You could have created a commercial that says, buy the Peloton bike. It has XYZ megahertz of all the technology of all the things. And you're like, meh. Okay. So what was so brilliant about that ad is that brand and what the commercial they created to represent that brand made you feel something.
Yes.
And people make purchases based on feelings.
That's exactly
not
right.
on the data, not on the information, not on any of the stats. It's I felt something that made me want to go buy it. Now, later we justify it with all the numbers.
Justify
so you need to know
facts.
that.
That's right.
You justify it later. But your brain makes decisions, purchasing decisions makes based on feelings, not on facts. We justify it later. So it's so important for your brand to make people feel something. Let's talk about this. How do we do that? How do we make people feel something? That's a great example in the Peloton. But even if it's not a television commercial, many of them aren't creating television commercials. Even through the imagery, through the fonts, through the colors, like make them feel something. How do we do that?
You got to understand what people deeply, deeply want. And you have to start putting that out there. And I mean on a deep level. I give an example of, I read this book once, and there's this company, they make detergent. And so the detergent sales weren't going very well. And so they said, okay, we got to figure this out. Because all the commercials talked about how their bleach crystals make your clothing better and cleaner and all that stuff, right? And so that apparently wasn't working. Jim Signorelli, that's who wrote about this. And he said, so they started talking to the audience, and so they just kept asking why to the audience. They said, now, why do you buy this detergent to this one woman? She says, well, I want my clothes to be clean. And he goes, okay, well, why do you want your clothes to be clean? And she said, well, because I want my family to look nice, to smell nice, And he's like, okay, well, why do you want to do that? And she's like, well, I want us to look nice when we go out. Like, I just want to be clean. And he's like, okay, but why? Why is that important? She goes, because I want to look like a good mom. And that's what it came down to. And he said, oh.
There's our ad.
So from there, they just started making ads and commercials showing someone looking like a great mom. And they said, hey, we'll make you feel like a great mom. And and they're not lying to you. Like if you have this detergent and your clothes are clean, they smell great, and you feel like a good mom, then they're doing exactly what they said they were going to do for you. So it's not manipulation. It's just understanding this is what they want, and this is what our detergent does for them. Let's talk about that, because they don't care about the bleach crystals, apparently. Let's talk about how we make them feel, and they make them feel like a great mom. And so you always want to be asking why. Why do they want this? Why do they need this? And put that out there, right? Like Peloton commercial. They're probably understanding life is hard. There you have fights with your spouse. You have difficulty with life is hard. But this is a world, Peloton, when you're on your bike, this is a space just for you where you can take out your frustrations, where you can just think and be yourself. And this is a world where you can recharge and get ready for the day again. Because it's tough, but we'll get you back in that place of recharging. And they said that's probably what people want. Let's make an ad about that.
That's right.
Not about how the facts of this thing will make
how
you stronger.
How fast the wheels spin or whatever the
it's not
tension
about
is.
that. And like I'm saying, it's very human. Like we're talking to people on a deep emotional level. And that's what you want to do, is understand those deep feelings, because that's what we do as people. Is we connect with people who understand our deep feelings. And if we as a brand can understand that on a deep level and then just put that back out to you saying, we understand you, we know your world, and you're with us, we're one of you. Let's do this thing together. If you can make it feel like that, oh my gosh, you're going to connect on such a deep level, and that builds trust and loyalty. That builds a great brand.
I love it. I love this example because it so much ties in with what Donald Miller talks about, which you and I are such fans of him as well. And we've actually talked about this in a previous Academy lesson and podcast with Donald Miller about the internal problem and the external problem. And he talks about this with Chick-fil-A, for example. The external problem, you need chicken, you're hungry. The internal problem is you don't want to feel gross for eating at fast food. And they are able to create an environment where you can go and not feel gross. And so I just
love... It's a real feeling.
And so Peloton, the external problem, you need to work out. The internal, it's how I feel about working out. It's about a release of my day, and this is just for me and all that. So I'd love that when you can ask yourself those questions. That's so good. I've actually talked to people about asking those questions even for themselves when they are their motivation for their business. But I love this customer facing why, and you get to that deeper level and you begin to speak to that, and that's what leads to sales, and that's what leads to your point. You are doing that for people. You are helping people. In Chick-fil-A, I left and I didn't feel gross about it. So it actually is true. It's not manipulative. It's true.
It is.
But you've got to speak to that if you want to speak their language and get them to act on it. And purchase.
And like Nike, I want to feel like an amazing athlete. I'm not in the NBA, but I want to feel like an amazing athlete. And then I buy Nike, and when I put it on, I feel pretty awesome.
That's right.
I ain't gonna lie, I feel pretty awesome.
That's right.
And Disney, same thing. I want to take my kids to a clean movie that I could trust. Is I'm not gonna have to worry. Language is gonna come out. Like that is what I want. And Disney says, yeah, we'll give you that.
I love it.
That's why they're successful.
Tim, I could seriously talk to you forever about this because we both love this topic. We both love helping small business owners. And it's just really fun. Like to me, branding is one of the most fun parts of your business. There's some boring stuff, but this is fun stuff. I love it. Okay, so next week they have homework. by the way, next week you have homework, to fill out your style guide. You're going to get this worksheet template to fill out. I would love it as we wrap up if you would just give them some guidance and advice as they approach this. For many of them, they've never filled out a style guide before. Yeah. And for many of them, they've been in business a while. So they're not starting a brand to dream it up from scratch, but it's more, I need to figure this out and then hold my business to it and kind of put it through this test. So give them a little bit of advice as we wrap up on how to do that.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing, it's really hard to start thinking of a style guide of what does this brand need to be. Instead, think, who am I? You know, like most of the time, most of the time, and I would think that most of your audience, the business is an extension of somebody.
Absolutely,
like somebody created this business, and so most of the time it is an extension of them. And so don't think of your brand as a person that needs to be created. Think of it, well, who am I? What matters to me? Like, who am I? How do I walk? How do I talk? If I were to write an email, how would I talk in the email? Yeah, like, think about it like that and write down that kind of stuff. Write down adjectives about yourself and think of who that is and start from there. Once you start from there, when you're looking at imagery and figuring out what it should be, just think, well, what feels right to me? You were hitting on this where with Business Boutique, you'd say, well, I wouldn't say it like that. I wouldn't, think about it like that. Like, how would I say this? What would I not do? But think about it from my perspective first. Don't think that this is something I got to create.
That's good.
Just think, start from me. Who am I at my core? What do I care about? What matters to me? And then just start putting that stuff in the style guide. And the thing is, it'll end up being very human that way. If it's very human, you're going to connect on a deep level. And that's what this is all about. You're going to build trust over time by doing that.
I love it. These ladies, many of them are solopreneurs, small businesses. It's very, even if they're not a personality, like an influencer, writer, speaker, many of them, it's a personality driven, it's a personal brand driven business and driven brand. And so that's just such great advice because it takes the pressure off of creating something from a blank slate. But who are you? And it's an extension of you. You know, it's funny how this will play into even the smallest nuances. Just yesterday, I was working with our marketing team on some emails we've got going out. Yeah. And this is so small. But it's when you know your style, I would say this or I wouldn't, then you pick up on it. And the email started with, hi, name, comma. Yeah. I said, let's do hey, name, exclamation point. Yeah. Because I never say hi, Tim. Yeah. I say, hey, Tim, and it's loud and excited.
And there's an exclamation point.
There's an exclamation point. So when you make those nuances, then when someone receives that email, they're like, Christy actually wrote this.
Exactly.
She's actually talking to me. Whereas if they read it and they know me, especially if they know me, and they read hi, so-and-so, comma, it doesn't feel like I'm actually talking to them.
And that's a trust breaker.
That's right. Yeah. Because they've talked to me before and they know how I talk. And so even small things can continue to build that trust and build that relationship.
It's true.
I love that.
Yeah, you know, if they read that email saying hi, something, intuitively you think, Christy didn't write this.
Yeah.
If it's written like
even if they don't think of it externally, they're thinking, it's like they kind of are more skeptical.
Yeah, and that's when trust starts to break down. Yeah. But if they read it exactly, like if it sounds like you are talking directly to them, trust is built.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's why this trust breaking, trust building is so important. But yeah, it's a great example.
I love how we're talking all about trust too, because when you build a really great brand, that's what you're doing is you're building trust, and people buy from those they know, like, and trust. So branding is not just this fun, optional, creative side of your business. It is the foundation for you building trust with your audience. Tim, you are just amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thanks for having me.
And you guys have homework next week to fill out your style guide to get you started and keep building an awesome brand. Thanks so much for watching. And if you're interested in joining my online training and coaching group, the Business Boutique Academy, well, you can go to businessboutique.com or click the link below.